does whatever a spider pig does. Can he swing from a web? No, he can't. He's a pig. Look out, he is a spider pig. Spider pig, does whatever a spider pig does. Can he swing from a web? No, he can't. He's a pig. Look out, he is a spider pig. Spider pig, does whatever a spider pig does.
Welcome back to Spider Pig. Team DWZ presents another pig review on some entertainment content that y'all probably gonna enjoy. Shouts out to our video sponsor, Brother Azim, for requesting some Death Note. So this is part 2 of his request.
Can he swing from a web? No, he can't. He's a pig. Look out, he is a spider pig. Spider pig.
Let's get into it.
A boy finds a notebook that you can write anybody's name down in and kill on a whim. Wants to change the world by killing bad people and scaring people from doing bad. Seems simple. So, when the police come for him, why doesn't he just sit in his room and keep doing it? It's not like they'd ever find him. Is he stupid? Well, what if I told you? That's not exactly what he actually wanted to do to begin with. In this video, let's go over the truth of Light Yagami's motives and what he actually wants as a character both consciously and unconsciously. For the past few years, I've been noticing this very common misconception of who Light is as a person, and they use it to attack Death Note as a fluffed up pseudo-intellectual series where the characters are actually somewhat dumb, but ramble and monologue in ways that seem intelligent. Some people go so far as to say the main character is so dumb he loses in episode 2. However, as I said, these are usually due to a few misconceptions about both Light Yagami and L, the protagonist and antagonist, respectively, of Death Note, and what they actually want to accomplish and do with their positions. I've hinted at a bit of this in my video, Is L Actually Evil?, which you can check out after or before this if you want, but this is more on the side of Light and how he more so functions in the story. In context, Light Yagami is a bit of a blessed child, very smart, considered handsome, has a loving and supporting family, and has the future sort of down pat. This is made further evident by other students being extremely jealous of him when he makes it into university, and how there's no justice because he has everything going on. Everything is pretty much guaranteed to go well. So what made him snap and become Kira, one of the most famous killers in all of shonen history? Disinterest and boredom. Light is very smart, and it's due to that he knows how things are going to go. The things that therefore excite Light and interest him are things that are unknown, and things that are not so certain, which is exactly why a notebook of death that can kill anybody interests him so much. Due to the way that Light is raised growing up, he has an inherent idea of justice being shoved in his head throughout his entire life. His father, Soichiro Yagami, is the ideal good person, to the point that even Death Note's author calls him pretty much the only good person in the story for the most part. Soichiro loves justice, honesty, and supporting those he loves. These thoughts are ingrained in Light, and we find that many times throughout the story when his murder-intoxicated self is wiped off of him, such as when he loses his memory, he becomes the ideal Yagami child that embodies these traits. The only difference between the mind-wiped Light and the normal one, however, when they first learn of the Death Note, is their position in comparison to it. For the normal Light, the Death Note was introduced to him before anybody else. The lack of certainty and supernatural notebook was something he had to look into to confirm it existed. But for the mind-wiped Light, this concept was already pitted against him and was made confirmed and known to him in advance. He was in the position to hunt for it instead of learning of it himself. When Yagami first obtains the Shinigami notebook, we get a flashback of him thinking of using it, in which we get the first real insight to his true motives, his desire to kill his boredom. This is due to him actually doing things he regrets astronomically even as Kira after the fact, and even doing things he would normally never do, even after becoming an intoxicated super killer later. The first example of this is when he decides to test the notebook first. Of course, he is actively and possibly killing someone that doesn't really deserve it in either Light or even L's opinions later, such as the Shinjuku killer, who is considered extremely minor compared to the others Light would kill after. This is due to the fact, of course, Light didn't know fully if the notebook would even work, but it's still important to note he tried anyway on this possibly undeserving person. Shortly after this, we see him in class, and we see some bullies picking on a fellow student of his, in which Light contemplates to himself if he should kill the bullies, but only rejects the notion due to the fact that he shouldn't kill people so close to him. That is a pretty insane and overlooked statement. Kill some school bullies? Kira would never kill someone that petty remotely later on, and in fact laments the idea of other Kiras that kill in his name, killing people that are too minor or undeserving later, especially so early. So why did he suggest killing kids for bullying? Because the Death Note is still new to him. The excitement of using it is above any moral compass he has. Later, we see him again in another situation where he is confronted with someone named Takuo Shibuimaru, a biker who is too aggressive when trying to pick up a girl. Light kills him by slamming a truck into him as he chases the girl before he actually technically commits a crime. This is something later explained in Death Note How to Read as being something Light actually regrets and has to come to terms with. In fact, he's so disgusted with himself, he almost vomits literally on the panel. So why did he do it? Because the Death Note's abilities and what they could do were more interesting. After doing this, he is more certain of what they could do and starts to value his moral compass more than the Death Note's random attributes and abilities. But in this situation, his boredom and desire for something more interesting overtook him, and this is exactly why the first chapter of Death Note is called Boredom. It goes even further than this, though. We still have to answer, why doesn't Light just sit in his room and kill people with the notebook if his interest now is changing the world and enforcing his moral compass? Because as I stated earlier, this is not what he wants. So let me prove it further. At the end of Chapter 1 of Death Note, we see Light Yagami encounter the God of Death that owns the Death Note he found, Ryuk. Ryuk explains his motives to Light and says he dropped it out of boredom. He just wanted to see how someone would use it, for the fun of it. Light too then replies that he has been using it because he has been bored too, but not before he admits he has been so excited for people to find out about his existence and change the world to the point he has lost 10 pounds from not eating due to the anticipation of the moments. His eyes glow and his face lights up as he sees people recognizing him for something interesting: his position as a god. Ryuk, after hearing Light's goals, becomes elated and thinks the whole idea is very fun. Ryuk's reactions are very important, and I'll get into those again soon. In the Death Note How to Read guide on page 76, Tsugumi Oba, the author of Death Note, actually goes over why he named every chapter what he did. And this is what he says about chapter 1, Boredom. End quote. The reasons for why Ryuk dropped the notebook and for why Light wants to become a god arise from boredom. So there was no hesitation in choosing this title for the first chapter, even though Light didn't exactly start using the notebook only out of boredom. End quote. Of course, there are more things than boredom for Light to start using the notebook, as I outlined earlier, such as his indoctrinated sense of justice that becomes warped via boredom. But you get the idea. Shortly after Light explains his fun idea to Ryuk, well, fun, the super detective L has begun his move against Kira with the help of the international police. The famous scene of him baiting Light into killing a prison inmate standing in for him that would only be airing on TV in the Kanto region of Japan to get his exact locations. L tells Light that he is not all beloved, that he is a murderer, and that he will catch and kill him. This new and mysterious powerhouse that rivals him in intelligence is the ultimate game. And in fact, Light comments how disappointing it was that their cat and mouse game could have been a lot more fun if L had been smarter before he killed L's stand-in, Lindell Taylor. But then we see Ryuk's reaction, and he is completely elated and brimming with excitement, calling humans a riot. If you don't get it yet, Ryuk is somewhat of a projection of Light's interest, his boredom, his inner demons made literal. The reaction Ryuk shows is the reaction Light has on the inside. To him, this is the game he wants to play. This is what he's been looking for. To say he lost when the game just started is somewhat of a nearsighted perspective on what's actually happening. Later, Light actually comments on the idea that he could just sit in his room with the Death Note and L would never find him, and could never get any proof of him. But instead, he says, "But I want to kill L." That's right, he values capturing and killing L just as much, if not even more so, than changing the world and his moral compass. But he could just kill people slowly and surely, gain support from the shadows, and as L never would found any evidence, loses favor with the public, and eventually nothing happens. L would sort of lose by default. But Light actively doesn't want that. He specifically wants to find and execute the man named L, because it is interesting. To break it down, Light had a dilemma in which he had to choose between his divine mission and his pride and boredom, but we see Light choose to risk his goal of changing the world when he challenges L. This shows us Light's true character and bypasses the idea that saving the world was his priority, or that he truly cared for it compared to the satisfaction of winning a game. We see this stated verbatim when Light, after shaking a bit of his rust off and getting ganged up on by L's successors, Nier and Mello, instead of anger or despair that he has to play these games all over again, he smiles. Finally, something interesting is happening again after the death of L. In fact, there's a situation where Light has the opportunity or a potential situation to kill all of the MPA agents he's working with and fake his own death to escape Nier and get away with everything. However, the reason he doesn't is for the mere fact that he would be running away from the challenge, his competition, his pride. These aren't the only times these things are brought up either. We see that not only is he bored, but he's highly competitive. Ever wonder what the point of the tennis game was? It's not like it was needed to do anything. Maybe just break the ice a bit better, but even generic conversation could have done that. It was for L to confirm if Light really was childish and hated losing just like him. But what we learn in actuality is that Light hates losing and is possibly even more competitive than L ever was. To the point that even after learning that the tennis game's victor had no point between them, Light actively states he wants to beat L down at it. And after the game is over, he's panting and dripping with sweat, whereas L doesn't have a single drop on him. You could say he really doesn't like losing, right? From here, people don't understand why Light made it obvious that he was a student and let the police track his killings. This is because, once again, they don't understand the story too well. The reason Light makes him being a student and knowledge more obvious is to close the gap between him and L. The second the police suspect he's a student, he shows he can kill people whenever he wants with zero schedule attached, to the point that L realizes that Yagami is not only baiting him, but making fun of him too. Light plans to use the police and turn them on the super detective, and in fact, if L didn't straight up meet the police and Light in person, this would have actually worked. I outlined these struggles more in my Light vs. L video, Who Was Really Smarter. Anyway, after all this with the police is done and Light makes his moves back, L comments that Light has closed the gaps between them, with the time for them to meet being at hand. After this, it's mainly Misa's slip-ups that cause Light to be put in bad situations, but that's a discussion I've already had in a few other videos that's not really relevant to this one. The other part of Light's character is his intense pride, which I somewhat foreshadowed already, which is also shown many times throughout the story, and also most notably during the tennis match. L also shares this trait and is willing to even take down innocent detectives in challenges of pride and destroy them to justify his positions and his place in the world, his sense of what he calls justice, which I once again go over in the L Evil video. This pride between them is so great that Light won't ever run away or take the easy way out against anybody at Whamby's house, and the fated battle between he and L is actually titled The Battle of Pride. This pride causes the characters to do things that would be seemingly suboptimal in dealing with the situation. But this doesn't just apply to Light, but to L and even Nier as well. To go further into that, everyone in the SPK, which is Nier's task force for taking down Kira after L's death, basically agrees that Light is Kira. They trust Kira's judgment on this 100%. Light actually questions if Nier has L's pride in his monologues, and thinks Nier may straight up try to kill him due to not having it. However, we later learn that Nier actually does have pride and would refuse to detain or kill Light even if he only does something moderately suspicious until he has a 100% and utter victory over him, to win L's Battle of Pride. This pride is what makes a lot of the characters seemingly do things, like I said, that don't seem optimal, and is another reason Light doesn't just sit in his room and ignore L while writing in his notebook all day. A character having inner conflict between two motives such as this doesn't mean he is less intelligent, and only goes to show the writing quality of the story and how he's more like a real person. In Story, Style, Structure, Substance, and the Principles of Screenwriting, Robert McKee explains this as the true character, in which true character can only be expressed through choice and dilemma. How the person chooses to act under pressure is who he is. The greater the pressure, the truer and deeper the choice to character. So when someone is forced to deal with a life or death choice against the world's greatest minds and decides to make these choices, you can be sure it's probably more akin to his true self and his real motives, with his initial unconscious desires becoming more conscious as he gets older, which is why he comments on L's pride when analyzing someone like Nier, whereas when he was younger, he thought it was actually due to his moral compass completely. There's one more thing that I sort of want to refute before wrapping up this video, a little bit off topic, but I thought I might say it, and that's a video you've probably already seen already, in which people think that Light slipped up and gave information about the Kitamuras and Ray Pember trailing him to L, that he shouldn't have known at the time, which basically just makes him admit he's guilty. The only problem with this, and maybe it's due to being somewhat subtle, is that Light and L talk in this hospital he gives the information out about the case.
Hey, it's been several months since my last Death Note video, so why not another now? Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Anime Theory, where the requests for more Death Note content never end, and neither does my want to talk about this wonderful series. And before I get started, I need to mention that this theory will contain spoilers for Death Note. If you haven't watched it, then I'd suggest doing so, as this series is brilliant. Personally, it's my second favorite currently, though to be honest, my favorites list does change quite often, basically on a borderline daily basis. But yes, Death Note is clearly a favorite here on this channel. I have never seen a group of people so devoted to a single anime, and it makes me really happy too, since it gives me even more opportunity to talk about this fantastic series. And talk we have. We've spent quite a lot of time on Death Note characters, whether it be near manipulating the ending, the mental aspects of the series, and now today is no different either. You see, we're discussing a theory that has long been a subject of debate for fans. That is, exactly what happened at the end of Death Note. By that I mean, what happened after Light lost the confrontation with Nier. A variant of this theory has circulated forums and videos for years, but most people tend to leave, well, let's just say, lacking evidence to say the least. Being the addict that I am, I've decided to completely spell out what happened to our dear pal Light, and oh boy is this an interesting one. Let's dig right in. So if you're a keen watcher of Death Note, you'd recall that upon receiving the Death Note, Light is informed of something interesting. Ryuk states that the user of a Death Note is unable to go to heaven or hell, and that they go somewhere else instead. What's interesting is that in the Death Note universe, neither hell or heaven exist. Instead, upon death of a person, they go to Mu, or nothingness. Taking this into mind is interesting because that implies that there would be no afterlife to go to regardless, especially in the case of the user of a Death Note. This begs the question then, where exactly does the user of a Death Note go? Well, I believe I can provide the exact answer through context clues. Now firstly, recall that we only get to see two different realms, that of Earth and the Shinigami realm. With heaven and hell not existing either, this suggests that they are the only two realities that exist in the Death Note universe. These two universes are connected as well, as the Shinigami have the ability not only to watch the human realm and kill off humans using the Death Note, but they can also travel easily through the worlds through the use of their wings. With these two worlds being the only existing worlds, and with both of them being connected, it seems likely that the only place for the Death Note users to end up is the Shinigami realm. There's more evidence than this, however. The show makes consistent allusions to the idea of Light going to the Shinigami realm. After Ryuk explains the dire state the realm is in, Light seems to like the idea of fixing the realm, even going as far to tell Ryuk that perhaps his realm could be fixed. After this, however, we never really get any continuation of the storyline at all. The show just ignores the entire plot point and moves on. Not to mention, the show makes several allusions to Light ending up there, chief among those is in the second opening. Right at the end, Light is shown broken in the middle of the Shinigami realm, the Death Note in a small puddle and Light seemingly trapped there. This isn't some vague symbolism trying to tell you that Light will lose. This was specifically done to show you what will happen to Light. Considering the lack of any afterlife and the previous points, it's obvious that the only place for Light to end up in is the Shinigami realm. I mean, it only makes sense. Where else would Ryuk be referring to? But I hear what you're saying. What would happen next? What would happen if Light ended up in the Shinigami realm? It's not like there's any way to know, right? Wrong. In fact, we already have seen what happens to Light. You just might not have heard of it. Present in the Death Note Relight films, which are retellings of the original Death Note story, there exists some extra story we never saw before. We get to see Ryuk long after the events of Death Note and the existence of another Shinigami. And this Shinigami is none other than the god of the New World himself, Light Yagami. It may not seem like it initially, but trust me, there's no two ways about it. This has to be Light. There's just too many similarities. Firstly, the appearance is obviously extremely close to Light. He looks far more human than most of the Shinigami present in the show, though to be fair, Shinigami in general do look eerily close to humans. His clothing looks similar to what Light wore throughout the series, and even his hair is literally almost the exact same color as Light's. Appearance-wise, the two share tons of similarities. Heck, it even limps in the same way that Light does at the end of the series after being shot by Matsuda. Also, this Shinigami takes an extreme interest in the human world, and seeks out Ryuk specifically to hear about the story. He even bribes him with an apple, and tosses it in the same exact way that Light would. In the middle of the story, however, Ryuk starts talking differently, stating, "You were not a god. You were just... gone already?" Not only does it seem as if he's talking to the Shinigami directly, but this same Shinigami leaves to go to the human world early, perhaps already knowing the ending to the story. It's clear due to the strange interest followed by the sudden exit that this Shinigami had ulterior motives, and knew something more than normal. He even knows that Ryuk has this story to begin with, and actively seeks him out. It's a bit obvious that this is all planned out from the beginning. Just look at the situation surrounding the Shinigami as well. They live in a dull world with very little being shown of their origins. We don't know how Shinigami are created, why they exist, or why they're so connected with the humans. I mean, seriously, they build their lifespan by killing off humans, and who else besides the Shinigami are allowed to use the Death Note? That's right, humans. Even the appearances of the Shinigami look very human, featuring limbs, heads, bodies, and a general structure that, though a bit freaky, undoubtedly share several similarities with humans. They can even consume food, though in their case, they don't need to digest food. Apparently, they're
Higher life forms that don't eat. Ah, fucking demons. Do 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 do. Message.
their organs are rotted, which implies that not only did they previously have organs, but that they were likely similar to that of a human, considering the fact that they still consume food, specifically apples. Also, look at the population of Shinigami. It's not exactly a large group, and yet the society still hasn't gone extinct. In essence, these Shinigami clearly can die, and yet the group still exists. Sure, they can extend their lifespan by killing humans with a Death Note, but as the series explains, several of them just die because they don't do it. So, how could this society repopulate? How could a set of creatures without the ability to reproduce somehow keep the society going? Well, that's easy. By turning humans into Shinigami by giving them the Death Note. So, in the end, Light didn't just die off at the end of the anime. As the series shows, humans who use the Death Note clearly go somewhere after death that normal humans don't go to. Considering the aspects of the Shinigami themselves, the abundance of symbolism in scenes portraying Light in the Shinigami realm, and the obvious similarities between Light and this Shinigami, it's clear that Light transformed into one after his loss at the end of the anime. As the series shows, however, one door closing simply opened up another one. Now that Light is no longer human, he's able to do something completely different. Perhaps Light can not only continue his plans to fix the world, but also fix the desolate Shinigami realm as well. I'm sure he'll come up with some crazy plan, and this time there'll be no cheating Niers to get in the way. But that's just my crazy theory. I hope you enjoyed it. And hey, if you like this video, why don't you check out some of my other videos? Or hey, how about you comment anything? I'm good with it. If you want to talk about goldfish, talk about goldfish. They're pretty great. And hey, if you like this kind of video, why don't you subscribe and stuff like that? Because, you know, kind of helps you see other videos like it. And if you want more Death Note content, tell me in the comments, because the more comments I get, the more Death Note videos I make. So, thank you, and I hope you enjoyed it. See you later.
A god of death has just given you the power to kill anyone in the world by writing down their name, but a genius detective is predicting your every move and trying to end you. You'll have to manipulate friends and family and kill anyone who gets in your way to stay ahead, but you're only one mistake away from getting caught. The abilities of this notebook are not perfectly balanced, so I'm going to break down the mistakes made, how to exploit this notebook to its deadliest potential, and how to beat the Death God himself and outsmart everyone in Death Note. This kid is about to become the deadliest serial killer in the world. Light here is a law student and is frustrated by the failing justice system in Japan. Looking for answers, he decides to hack into the police database and discovers that tons of criminals are being released and never punished for their crimes. But luckily, he'll soon have the power to fix this problem. Wanting to see for himself, he goes to a seedy bar to spy on a criminal. This guy here is a child killer and starts bragging about how nobody could lock him up. Light is threatened at knife point by this gang and forced out of the bar. But outside, he finds a mysterious black book laying in the street. He takes it home and cracks it open, learning that this book has special powers. But with those powers come a set of 5 rules. The first rule is if he writes down someone's true name on its pages, that person will die in 40 seconds. Okay, most of us would be skeptical here because magic doesn't exist, but there's no way we're not going to test it out. The most tempting thing to do is write down the name of someone you might already know and hate, but this could associate you with the death, so I would make a hard rule to never kill anyone I've met before. The next mistake is to write down a public figure that you might dislike. The death would get way too much attention from the government and would be heavily investigated. The smartest way to test this is to kill someone who is already expected to die, so that in the off chance this is real, you aren't doing too much damage and it's not obvious that you did it. I would research who the world's oldest living person is and write their name down. They've had a good long life and everyone was expecting them to drop dead, so it's not going to be a surprise to anyone when they croak. Now, killing is fun and all, but the financial exploits of this book could be huge. We have a power that a lot of people would envy, so if you know your way around the dark web, you could offer assassinations and get filthy rich. We'll soon find out there are other rules to this book that can be exploited, and Light doesn't know them yet, but they could pay off big time. Now this brings us to the second rule of the Death Note. It will only take effect if the writer knows the person's face and thinks of it as they write their name down. Light here decides to test it out on a wanted killer announced on the news, and the next day he reads an article about how that same man was found dead from a heart attack. It might be a strange coincidence, but he wants to confirm if this power is real. Later that night, he tracks down the child murderer from the bar and writes his name in the Death Note. 40 seconds later, the killer collapses to the ground, and Light here is shocked to see he's died from a heart attack, just like the first guy. This law student is now the most dangerous person on the planet, and with a taste for blood, he's just getting started. Okay, you might think that dying from a heart attack won't arouse suspicion, but Light here will soon find out that this is a serious lapse of judgment. For starters, Japan has one of the lowest coronary heart disease death rates in the entire world, partly because it has less problems with obesity. But if scores of healthy sushi-eating criminals start to die from heart attacks, this won't go unnoticed, and we have to be smart about how to use this power without getting caught. First of all, we need to make sure we understand the limits of this book, and before we go on a killing spree, I would do some heavy experimentation with this thing. If we filled a fax machine with Death Note paper, you could kill in public simply by sending an email without looking suspicious. If I wanted to fake a death, I might try writing in fading or erasable ink. These ideas might not work, but we'll learn what's possible. On his way back home, this demonic creature appears, introducing himself as the death god who dropped the book, and he's decided to let him keep it. The creature explains that only those who touch the Death Note can see him, and is neither his ally or enemy. He asks the monster what its name is, and is introduced to his new partner in crime, Ryuk. Alright, even though he seems nice enough, we can't assume this guy's on our side. If he's neutral, then he could ruin our plans or dox us at any given moment for his own amusement. This thing is a loose end you do not want to leave yourself vulnerable to. Obviously, writing his name down in the death book is a place to start, but he probably can't be killed and it would just piss him off. The best strategy here is to find out his motives and bribe him. I would be doing research to find out more about this creature that might exist in folklore. Light here doesn't know enough about him yet, but soon we'll learn more about this death god that we can take advantage of later. Light here decides to ramp things up and goes on a killing spree. No one knows who's committing these murders, but they start calling this vigilante Kira, which is the Japanese pronunciation of killer. 4 months later, and the police department can't figure out the connection between all these dead criminals. They believe a virus might have killed the victims, but the captain here thinks they might have a serial killer on the loose. He goes to meet with the commissioner and learns that the brilliant detective L is on the case. He's analyzed the data and figured out that not only is Kira in Japan, but he's also a single person killing people through unnatural means. Okay, Light is going on a bender here, and it's not the smartest move. The pattern has already emerged, and it's getting way too much attention. But this has a solution, because the third rule of the Death Note is if the cause of death is written within 40 seconds of writing the person's name, it will happen. A sharp increase in heart attacks among a healthy population will show a pattern, so we need things to be as random as possible with no pattern behind it. The best way to do this is with dice. I would compile a list of criminals I wanted to kill and assign each a number. Then assign a death style to a different number and a time to a different number. Then a series of dice rolls will tell me who dies, how, and when. This gives us a limitless combination of deadly possibilities, removing any pattern to investigate, and they could all be pre-planned days or weeks ahead. Back at home, Light here is about to meet his match, and it could break everything. He tunes into an international broadcast where the detective L announces to the world he's been tasked with helping uncover who Kira the vigilante is. He describes the killer as predictable and immature. Taking it personally, Light here writes the detective's name into his death note and waits for him to die on TV. But when the man collapses from a heart attack, the real L reveals he's tricked Kira. He had a convict impersonate him and made it seem like the broadcast was shown internationally when it was actually restricted to Tokyo. In one big brain move, he's proven that Kira can kill people remotely and is also living in the Tokyo area. Okay, this L guy is an intellectual force to be reckoned with, but there's a way to turn the tables here by turning the government into public enemy number one. From now on, I'm writing every cause of death to be either suicide by capital punishment or suicide by cop. The death sentence in Japan is still active, and as much as 15 executions happen each year. This is a chess match of two extremely intelligent people, so using his own agencies to do your killing for you will force him to retreat and find a different plan to attack. Back home, Light has dinner with his family, and we find out his dad is the police chief in charge of the Kira investigation. Light offers to help on the case, but the man won't let his son get involved. Upset, he leaves the table and goes upstairs, where he hacks into the police reports and discovers that Detective L knows he's a student. He'll need to shake things up to throw them off his scent. 3 days later, the police are shocked to find criminals are dying every hour and on a perfect schedule. L here deduces that Kira can also manipulate the times of death, but this change in strategy happened after they discovered he was a student. So the detective realizes that he has access to the team's information and they might have a mole. Okay, Light has just confirmed that he can access the police department's information, and it gives them an opportunity to take that advantage away. I would go analog with the entire investigation and take everything offline, but use the database as a decoy by planting misinformation to study how he reacts to it. If we already know that Kira is a student, then we need to narrow our scope to a specific school if we want to get closer. We've also seen that Kira lets his emotions get the better of him when he's under pressure. I would put false information on the police database that the dean of Kira's school is coming in to give a testimony in less than an hour. He'll see the fake report and just might kill the dean. So whichever dean is dead by the end of the day is the school Kira goes to. On his way home, Light suddenly notices that he's being followed. Somebody is onto him, and he needs to find out who this is before they catch him. The Death God asks how he will get the stalker's name, but he has a plan, and he's gonna use rule number 4 to get it. After writing the cause of death, details of the death should be written in the next 6 minutes and 40 seconds. The next day, he's riding the bus with his girlfriend, and the stalker from yesterday has followed them. This is no accident, and Light has a master plan. At the next bus stop, a man gets in and puts a gun to the driver's head. Light tells his stalker that he'll stop the criminal, but the man tells him not to risk it, revealing he's an FBI agent and gets him to back down. Light here drops a piece of paper on the floor, and the hijacker picks it up, and after reading it, points his gun at him, but is shocked when he sees Ryuk standing in front of him. He tries shooting the monster, but the bullets go straight through. Freaking out, the man urges the driver to stop, and he gets off the bus, only to get hit by a car. This
whole thing was a setup to learn more about the FBI agents. Man, he takes them out. See, this is the, what was it? I don't even use this app to even know what it's called anymore.
This whole thing was an elaborate setup to learn more about this FBI agent, using rule number 4 to make the criminal hijack the bus and get him killed. Okay, this changes everything. If we can use this death note to control people's actions, I'm using this to get rich or die trying. We could use this on a billionaire, making them write us into their will for a full inheritance just before they die. Let's be honest, if you're going to kill people, you might as well take their money while you're at it. Back home, Light thinks that L sent the FBI agent after him, and there might be more than one. He knows he can't kill the agent stalking him, as he'll be the prime suspect, but if all agents were to die, then he would be safe. Ryuk is surprised at Light's bloodlust and starts to look concerned. There's a lot more to this death god than meets the eye. Okay, this is interesting. Ryuk should be happy here because as we learned, every death will extend his life. Clearly, we don't know everything about this guy, and if he's keeping secrets from us, we need to find some leverage over him to make sure he won't screw us over. Now, we saw on the bus that physical injuries cannot hurt this creature, so killing him is out of the question. But blackmail and bribery might still be on the table. Threatening to destroy this book might get us answers he doesn't want to give, so we might be able to use this to get him to do our bidding. We just have to be careful not to piss him off. The next day, the FBI agent leaves his hotel and heads to the subway. He's followed by his fiancée Naomi here and doesn't know that she's on the train watching him. He takes a folder left on a rack and finds a message from Kira, who knows him by name and wants to talk with him through this transmitter. With little choice, he activates the walkie-talkie and listens. Light demonstrates he's the real Kira by having the man next to the agent die from a heart attack. He then asks him how many other agents are in Japan, and he's told there are 11 others, but he doesn't know their names. Light then asks the agent to write his leader's name inside this box on the first page. He's fallen for the 5th rule. Even if you do not actually possess the Death Note, anyone can use it if you can recognize the person in his or her name. After writing it, he's told to access his computer as he'll receive all 12 IDs from his boss. He's then instructed to write their names in the remaining boxes. This was Light's brilliant plan. He tricked the agent into writing everyone's names on a page of the Death Note, and with it, he just signed the death sentences of all the other agents, as they all start dropping dead. When he gets up at the next station, he collapses from a heart attack and looks back to see Light standing in front of him. The agent's fiance rushes to save him, but it's too late, as Light's train pulls out of the station. He's won for now, but he's just created another enemy, and she will be much harder to beat. Okay, that was a genius way to extract the information, but he also made some mistakes here. First of all, going on the train was a terrible idea because now they will be scraping through the security footage of the incident, and this hooded figure would be a prime suspect. You could easily be tracked back to your home and caught. Now, if the agent is already being manipulated, there's no purpose to meet him on the train. I would have brought him to a much more controlled and isolated environment away from the public to make sure there were no cameras and nobody was following him. Personally, I wouldn't be killing FBI agents at all because it keeps revealing that you have insider information. This narrows down the suspects to people with connections to the police, and if your father is the leader of the investigation, then you will stay on the suspect list no matter what. The best way to throw out the stalker and mislead the FBI investigation without killing them is to set up a false confession. I would make 2 criminals march into the police station, and one of them declares that he is Kira. When they ask for proof, the second criminal will have a heart attack, making it look like the first criminal killed him with his mind. Then write in the death note that he cannot speak, eat, or drink water when he's detained by the police until he dies. It's an elaborate con that could go wrong, but at the very least, it buys us time to plan further ahead and cover our tracks without being followed. Later that day, the police chief announces to his investigation team that Kira is now killing people who aren't criminals and gives them the option to quit. Knowing how dangerous this has gotten, almost every single member leaves until only 6 are left. The police express their frustration for the detective and demand he shows his face if he wishes to continue working the case. Accepting their demand, the liaison takes the investigation team to a hotel where they meet the detective in person, and he is not who they expected. They all introduce themselves by name, and he chews them out for it. If he was Kira, he would have all their names and they'd all be dead. They've been on the losing end of this battle, but L has a new strategy that he thinks can stop Kira for good. Okay, this guy's a strange dude, but there's one detail here that tells me Kira is screwed. This guy only eats candy, and at first glance, this looks like a weakness, but it's not. Al here is using a high caloric intake diet to stay awake and alert for as many hours as possible. The brain uses the most calories in the body, where even a stoic professional chess match can burn the same amount of calories as running a marathon. Crab fishermen also do this when they have only a 3-day window to hunt for crab, and they need to stay awake as long as possible to maximize their time. Al is looking for an advantage even in his diet, and it tells me he's thinking on more levels than Kira is at the moment to ensure he doesn't miss any opportunity to catch his killer. Later, the dead agent's fiancée, Naomi, has taken matters into her own hands. She finds information on the bus hijacking from the newspaper and meets the driver, who mentions that her fiancé was seen arguing with a young man, but he disappeared before the police arrived. Meanwhile, Elle watches the surveillance tapes of the agent's death and finds an important detail in the footage. With one glance, he's figured it all out. He informs the team that he's narrowed down the list of suspects to the families in the police department, including the police chief's son, Light. He knows that the FBI agent was tracking Light and knows the agent's wife used to be part of the FBI, and since she followed him, she must have felt there was something suspicious going on. Suspecting Kira was on the subway, Alva arranges to plant cameras in the police chief's home and keep watch over Light for 7 days. Now, this is all well and good, but it's also completely unnecessary because Japan has a stop and frisk policy. They're super polite about it, but if this kid has proven he can kill someone at any given hour of the day, then it's either done in his mind or done through an object on his person. If he's frisked, he will either run away, which lets you arrest him, or they would find the book. This solution takes no resources other than a well-placed beat cop. The next day at college, Light here is greeted by his girlfriend and the woman he saw at the subway. She gives him a business card and admits she's the fiancée of the agent that was killed, and thinks Light here killed him. He denies the accusation and his girlfriend backs him up. Light here takes out a piece of paper from the death note and writes down the woman's name on it, but nothing happens to her. The woman warns him that he can't kill her because she gave him a fake name. Okay, this woman is dangerous. Her fiancé has been killed, and she has nothing left to live for. Desperate people who want vengeance are the kinds of people who will burn the whole place down just to prove a point. And that makes for a very dangerous loose end that we need to deal with the right way. The only way out of this is to satisfy her bloodlust. I would find a criminal to manipulate, tell her he is Kira, then the cause of death is that the manipulated criminal gets shot by the woman and killed. This gives enough emotional trauma for her to believe that she's gotten vengeance for her fiancé's death by killing the man herself. Later that day, Light returns home and discovers that his room has been broken into. Earlier, he placed pencil lead in the hinge of his door, and it's now broken. Now Light knows he's under surveillance and can't do anything with the Death Note or Ryuk until he tricks them. The police chief is told Light will be left alone if his son does nothing suspicious and there are still more deaths. The college student still isn't cleared of being a murderer just yet. Okay, this looks like Light here is cornered, but they've played right into his hands. First of all, you can't build a case on this because you can't prove a negative. If no deaths happened during his surveillance, that's circumstantial evidence at best, and it isn't enough to arrest him or even take him to court. This is a fool's errand, but there's another massive oversight here. L should have considered that this kid is a law student whose father is the chief of police, and he should know that according to Japanese law, under Article 23 of the 1999 Act for wiretapping in criminal investigation, the suspect must be notified by the police. If they don't, under Article 30, Light can legally sue them for breaking the law, and they'll be forced to leave him alone. He had a great opportunity here to sabotage their whole operation, and he didn't take it. By day 7, the surveillance team is still observing the college student, but when breaking news about an arrested child murderer is reported, they realize Light isn't even watching. Moments after, the murderer dies of a heart attack while in custody, and Light hasn't moved a muscle. They're convinced it's not him, but Light has tricked them all, because inside his chip bag is a miniature TV playing the news and a piece of paper from the Death Note. With the college student cleared of suspicion, Elle receives a call from the FBI agent's fiancé, who claims she will risk her own life to prove that Light is Kira, and the first part of her plan is to make his girlfriend call him to meet at the art gallery. The surveillance team watches through the cameras as Light enters the building. He sees the woman holding his girlfriend hostage and is told to confess that he is Kira. He begs the woman to let her go and insists that he's not Kira, but the woman reveals her real name and dares him to kill her. He slowly pulls out a pen to write her name down, but stops when he hears police sirens in the distance. His girlfriend breaks free and runs to him, but gets shot. The woman is horrified by her mistake and kills herself out of guilt. Light mourns his girlfriend's death and puts on a good show, but it turns out this was his plan all along. At the subway, he noticed her folder had a cross on it, and he traced it to the church where she was getting married. He found her name in the records and wrote down in the Death Note that she would lure Kira to the museum and kill herself trying to catch him. He then wrote that his girlfriend would be shot to death without specifying by whom. Since the woman was the only one in the room with a gun, the Death Note caused her to kill his girlfriend. When his father comes to take him home, he asks if he can join the Kira investigation so that he can get revenge on Kira. That's when Elle appears and approves his membership. These two masterminds are just getting warmed up, but they both don't realize a new player is about to join the game. In another part of the city, a famous young woman is being followed by her delusional stalker who wants to kill her. She's cornered with no one to help, but the man suddenly collapses from a heart attack and a Death Note falls right next to him. There's more than one book, and things are about to get way more interesting.
But what do you think? How would you beat Death Note? Let me know with a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching, leave a like and subscribe, and check out the How to Beat playlist for more videos like this. Until next time.
And that's the wrap up of How to Beat Death Note and Death Note. Y'all know what time it is.
Oh, we can't. He's a pig. Look out. He is a spider pig. Spider pig. Spider pig. Does whatever a spider pig does. Can he swing from a web? No, we can't. He's a pig. Look out. He is a spider pig. Spider pig. Spider pig. Does whatever a spider pig does.